Welcome to today's 5-minute professional learning presented by CAPITALISE Education. In today's professional learning bite, we're going to examine how we can support a student on the autism spectrum with executive functioning difficulties using LEGO and the Universal Design for Learning framework. The characteristics and functional impact of students on the autism spectrum varies significantly. As the saying goes, once you have met one child on the autism spectrum, you have met one child on the autism spectrum. As such, it's really important to have a deep understanding of the characteristics of your student and the functional impact. In this professional learning bite, we're going to have a look at a student who has a restricted interest in LEGO. Our hypothetical student on the autism spectrum also has challenges associated with executive functioning. According to Beth Saggers at the Queensland University of Technology, every person on the autism spectrum is unique and their needs will be reflected differently. For this reason, it's really important for teachers to be able to discern the characteristics of their students on the spectrum and the functional impact of those characteristics. The characteristic of our student on the autism spectrum is that they have an interest in LEGO. The functional impact is that the student doesn't want to engage in the Australian curriculum. He only wants to talk about LEGO all day. The characteristic of our hypothetical student on the autism spectrum is that he has difficulties with executive functioning. The functional impact of this is that the student regularly arrives to the classroom upset and angry. During the lesson, the student's emotions are regularly changing, leading to bursts of angry yelling. So, what can we do to support this student? For our hypothetical student who has a characteristic of having an interest in LEGO, which means that he doesn't want to engage in the Australian curriculum, he only wants to talk about LEGO all day, we could look at UDL checkpoint 7.2, optimizing relevance, value, and authenticity. For our hypothetical student on the autism spectrum with executive functioning difficulties, the functional impact is that the student regularly arrives to the classroom upset and angry. During the lesson, the student's emotions are regularly changing, leading to bursts of angry yelling. What can we do to support the student in the classroom? If we have a look at the UDL framework, we could identify UDL checkpoint 9.2, facilitating personal coping skills and strategies. I love this quote. No tool is omnicompetent. There is no such thing as a master key that will unlock all doors. Rather than wielding a single tool, generalists have managed to collect and protect an entire tool shed, and they show the power of range in a hyper-specialized world. For this reason, classroom teachers need a range of tools in their tool shed. This is what I like about the Universal Design for Learning framework. It provides you a range of tools to apply during the planning, teaching, and assessment cycle to break down barriers to learning for all students. Because the Universal Design for Learning framework is not a specific pedagogical strategy, but a way of thinking about breaking down barriers during the planning, teaching, and assessment cycle, we need to look at our UDL checkpoint, minimizing threats and distractions, and thinking about how we could practically do this within the classroom. As a classroom teacher, we could look at using the zones of regulation where different colors, blue, green, yellow, and red, represent different emotions. We could place the zones of regulation as opposed to somewhere very visible in the classroom so that the students can regularly refer to it. I then assign a LEGO minifigure to each student in the classroom. They can choose their LEGO minifigure that best represents them. This is connecting to my student on the autism spectrum's restricted interest in LEGO. the start of each lesson, each student in the classroom then goes and collects their Lego minifigure and places their Lego minifigure in the coloured container that reflects how they are feeling in relation to the zones of regulation. As a classroom teacher, I can then use this information to monitor how my student on the autism spectrum is feeling. I would also encourage my students to, during the lesson, if the way they feel changes, they would be encouraged to go up to the container, collect their Lego minifigure, and move it to the container that reflects how they're currently feeling. This would give me evidence of how my student on the autism spectrum feels throughout the lesson, and I can adjust my teaching based on his needs. Alternatively, rather than using Lego minifigures, I could give each of my students in the class 4 Lego blocks, 1 block for each colour of the zones of regulation. At the start of each lesson, I ask the student to choose the colour that best reflects how they're feeling in relation to the zones of regulation and put the block at the front of their desk. During the lesson, if the student's emotions or feelings change, they can then change the coloured block to reflect how they're feeling. I could once again use this to monitor how my student on the autism spectrum is feeling and adjust my pedagogy based on how they are feeling. Thank you for listening to today's 5-minute professional learning presented by CAPITALISE Education. At CAPITALISE Education, we believe that teachers achieve a lot more in collaboration than they do in isolation. As the African proverb goes, if you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.